much for joining us tonight. Today, as you all know, we are here for Alex Segura's new Star Wars book, Poe Dameron Freefall, and he is going to be in conversation with Zoraida Cordova, who many of you also know in our section. But I'm going to go ahead, let them take it away, give more of an introduction into the book.
You froze. I'm sorry, Constance. We're just going to go.
Yeah, we're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
How's it going? Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. Welcome to the Star Wars family. This is amazing.
It's awesome. You guys have been so welcoming, and it was like from day one, the announcement came out, and oh, she's back. She's moving.
She's still frozen.
You're back. Yeah.
You're back. You're still frozen on my end. I can hear Alex solidly. So
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just keep rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, from the day the book was announced, everyone was so warm and welcoming and awesome.
So you and I are both writing in the young adult section of the Star Wars universe, and that means something really specific, right? We're writing the teen versions of these characters and the people that inhabit this galaxy. So for me, like the question people always ask me is like, how did you feel writing the Star Wars for your very first time?
It was daunting. It was really daunting at first, and I think you go into any kind of, I hate to call it work for hire because that makes it sound so businessy and formal, but now I'm the only person here. I'll keep talking, but writing.
You can keep it.
Okay, I'll keep going. I think Zoraida got bumped, but it's a great question. So, writing in Star Wars is daunting because it's such an expansive universe. It's such a legendary IP to work from. And then adding on top of that, doing the YA versions. It's funny because when I write YA, I write it the same way I write my crime novels or anything else.
Yeah.
But it definitely was really exciting because when I started, they were very, they were welcoming from beginning to end, but they were very much about, throw in ideas, do new stuff. And you don't expect that. I think going into something where you're working with this like heralded brand, you don't expect it to be so freewheeling and creative. And that was really exciting to me.
Yeah.
Did you get that same experience?
I did. And so my book, A Crash of Fate, takes place on Galaxy's Edge, the world of Batuu, which is a completely new space. And I didn't just have Lucasfilm look at it. I had Disney Imagineering look at it. So it was 2 rounds of notes and critiques and sort of shaping this world. So there were other kinds of limitations, but I've done a lot of IP in my career, and Star Wars is I don't want to say like the most free because there are definitely like rules and things that you can't do, but as far as concept, on the concept level, Star Wars is the most welcoming of the IPs that I have done. And IP, for those of you who don't know, it just means intellectual property. And so that's something that I really love because it's showing that as a concept in the books, they're letting us do a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think, you've worked with different IP, and I have a comic book background, and I think that helped us. And I'm not going to try to assume why they chose us, but I think part of it may have been just that we're easy to collaborate with, or we've done stuff like this before. And with Freefall, there was a lot of back and forth, not in the kind of bossy way, but just in conversational ways. And I think that really helped. And having that comic book background where you're really jamming with other creative people to create this one thing, I think made it much easier. Like I was much, I'm pretty comfortable getting notes and taking notes and tweaking things. And that like paired with the freedom that you get was really exciting.
I think what was one of your favorite notes? Did you have any favorite notes when you were working on the book?
Yeah, I think one of the best notes was from Jen Heddle, the editor, and I have a droid in there, and I think I kind of defaulted to a very typical droid personality, and she said, "Why don't we make this droid like much more cheerful? Like make it like the the opposite of most of the droids, and who are usually kind of dour and like the C-3PO, like panicked British gentleman, And so we made it this very like polite, friendly, cheerful, almost like a Care Bear type character, and it actually I've seen I try not to read too many of the reviews. Like I'm just enjoying the moment, but a lot of people have been responding well to the droid, so that was cool.
Yeah. One of my favorite
you?
notes I had one from Imagineering, and it
Oh,
was,
interesting.
"This is too nice for a stormtrooper." And so I think that just encapsulates who I am. So my new name is Zoraida, too nice for a stormtrooper, Cordova. That's my Star Wars name.
That's your Star Wars name.
Yeah. And so it was things like that. It's such an enjoyable experience. So, okay, that's what writing for Star Wars is like. And I'm sure people will have more questions on that. But what were some of your favorite moments of writing Poe?
You know, it's so funny because with characters that you've never written before, there's a ramping up period, and it takes you a while to kind of get a feel for them. And I don't mean to sound like, egotistical here, but when I first wrote him, I felt like, okay, this is him. This is his voice. And I think he just speaks in such a clear, definitive way. And I just got a kick overall, just getting the chance to write his origin, I think is such a huge honor. But just little moments, the character moments I think were most exciting, like moments with Zori. There's a big confrontation with his dad early on. And, his mother's gone by the time the book starts, but she's ever present. There's a few scenes where we flash back to Shara teaching him how to fly, and then just moments where he channels her. And I really wanted to show a strong mother-son relationship because, a lot of Star Wars is fathers and sons and legacies. And I really wanted to show that he's very much the product of these two people. Like, he's got her lust for adventure and her, excitement and heroism, and he's also got a lot of Kess in that he's very brave, and he's also very loyal and very tactical and smart. So it was a lot of that, a lot of the little moments. So it is a very action-packed book. I think from beginning to end, you kind of I had to weave those character moments between these big epic action moments.
Yeah, that's so cool, and I love how you captured Poe's voice, because if he's exactly who you think he would be as a teenager, and I feel like. Even it's also weird when you say Zori, because Zori is the nickname for Zoraida. And so that's what my family calls me. And so
I'm just talking about you.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, oh no.
You're in the book.
And my family are the only people who call me Zori. Now that like Star Wars has come out and I see it more on the internet, I'm just like, are people talking about me? Because it's not I know it's not a common name, so it's really cool. But yeah, so Poe, is there anything that surprised you about Poe at all?
I guess when you see him, the movies are the big moments, are the big epic universal moments, and I think we in the expanded universe kind of take not the quieter but the more character driven stuff and kind of what happens between that allows you to flesh out the movie. But how sensitive he was, honestly, like how, not just loyal, but how emotional he was. And he's 16, obviously, and the whole book kind of turns on a very typical 16-year-old decision where you make a bad call and leave home and leave with some shady people and do some crazy stuff, and you're not really sure how bad these people are. And it felt like a very teenage mistake. But even at that point, he's very emotional and he's very sensitive and very much just this kind of lonely boy who's like got no anchor. It felt very YA and very emo, but it's also Star Wars, which was fun. And I think that longing for connection caught me by surprise.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, it's like Anakin without the murder.
Right? Yeah, no murder.
Because he's just like, it's that sadness of lost, like he's lost. And so I think Star Wars is a lot about bringing people back home, and what that home means is just so amorphous because it means something different to everybody. But for the rebels, the home is the rebellion, right? And all these bases. So that's pretty great that you.
Yeah, and this sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and this idea of kind of like building your own family, like. I think a lot of the story is really about, we have to go through, it feels basic, but it's also something we can all experience. Like we have to go through bad things and experience bad people and make our own mistakes because, your parents can tell you the right thing to do a million times. And at the end of the day, you're not going to do it until you scrape your knee yourself, and it was interesting for me to write that because I can see it from both perspectives, like being a relatively youngish dad, like I have 2 young kids, but I could also see Kess's perspective, like why he's being so protective of Poe and why he's like, I don't want you to die or lose you the same way I lost my wife and your mom. And Poe's just like, I just want to get out there. I want to experience life. I don't want to be on this moon forever. And it made me feel old and young at the same time, which was good.
Because you could see all of the adventurous parts, but then you're also like, I'm a dad. Like, I have to responsibilities and make sure that he doesn't blow himself up. Or we don't.
Yeah, don't get on that rickety ship.
What was your research experience like? Because when I wrote A Crash of Fate, I almost went too hard into like, I need to find every book that ever existed about Star Wars and read it. And now I'm going to be an expert because I don't want somebody to try to like get me at a conference and be like, well, what's the name? What do you call this button on the Millennium Falcon? You're not a true Star Wars fan. You know what I mean? So that's sort of the
No, I love that you
spiral.
said that. Yeah. I mean, I wish we had talked like kind of at the beginning, but there was some pressure because I am a Star Wars fan. Obviously, I've seen all the major stuff and I've read some books, but I did feel the need, like you did, to go back and kind of get a doctorate in Star Wars because I didn't want to be called out for not knowing who this background character in this, whatever, who was that? And but it turned out to be a lot more fun. It was a lot of fun because I got to go back to a lot of stuff I'd already engaged with, but look at it with the Poe specific viewpoint. And so I read Resistance Reborn. I read all of the Charles Soule, Poe Dameron stuff. I read your book. I read the Aftermath trilogy, and it was great because then I got to see the big arc. I saw Poe's big arc, and I could see, okay, there's a few spaces here, and I can also grab things from these other pieces and add them to the tapestry. And I love that the books are in conversation with each other. It sounds very hippie to say that, but we kind of are. Like, I read the books and I would make notes and take characters and kind of throw them into my book and see if they fit. Like, there's a really cool cameo at the end of Freefall, and I got to tell the writer about it, and they were very excited. Just, like stuff like that. It's like, we're fans too, so we're kind of giving ourselves like these fan moments, and hopefully the fans themselves like pick it up as well. But how deep did you get into your research?
Other than so I got the big visual encyclopedias of Star Wars, and I almost wish that I had pulled back a little bit and saved that for a second draft, because I didn't know how much we could actually create, right? Like, instead of referencing Naboo for the 70 millionth time, why don't you create your own planet? And I was like, oh, I can do that. And so that was one of my favorite parts, was saying, I'm going to contribute to making the galaxy bigger. And I love that, right? And so my favorite part of research was I did read some of the Legends books. So I went into the Knights of Coruscant and looked at, just to see stylistically how people, I like to do my homework in that sense. I'm like a big nerd in that way.
Yeah,
I was a terrible student, but I'm a great Star Wars student. So I researched, I watched the movies a billion times, obviously, but that came with a different territory. I feel like now when I rewatch things for the purpose of writing, I think about story differently. I think about characters differently. And I think about motivations differently, because motivations don't have to just fit the worlds that we're creating. They have to fit within the guides of Star Wars. And that is something that feels so big and so daunting, and kind of paralyzed me for the beginning of when I was writing this book. So I decided I took a breath. I actually wrote this book when I was in Amsterdam.
Oh, nice.
So it was like when we could travel back in the day.
When we could leave our house.
And so I was writing it while in between these long, misty walks along canals, and there's 0 canals on Batuu, but I would just let myself sink into my characters and remember that the most important part of the story are the characters, because even like Star Wars is all the flashy stuff, but we're here for the people that populate the galaxy. So if that's not there, then nobody's going to read this, and nobody is as loyal to a specific genre as Star Wars readers. So you have to do like due diligence. It's scary. That's all. Like, end of story. TLDR.
Yeah, it's very stressful.
It's
No, it's so true. And I think we're coming at it from the same place. Like, for me, all plot comes from character. Like, I can't just write, like a plot-based thing where the characters remain the same. Like, my PI novels are literally 5 novels about a guy who starts out as a hot mess drunk and finally ends up recovered and, normal, like level, and so when I was thinking about Poe, I was like, where does he start? What happens? And where does he end? Like, these are like key moments in his life. And I really have to stick the landing, like, pardon the pun, but he's got to start as a hero, but he has to learn how to be a hero on the way. Like, he's still Poe. When you see him at the beginning of the book, like, okay, this is the character we're going to meet. But by the end of it, you really feel like, okay, now he's on his way to being that pilot we meet at the beginning of Force Awakens. And that's all character. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's surprising to me is in Star Wars, we always think about like what is the moment that these people decide to be heroes? Because I feel like Poe could have gone a very different way. He could have, I don't know. I don't even want to be like he could have been friends with Ben, Kylo. But I feel like he could, like, there's a moment where, with all of his tragedy, all of his darkness, all of his sadness, all of these unresolved pain, like bruises, emotionally, like, he could have done a different way. And so, like, your job is to like show the moment that he decides to be heroic, because like having heroic parents doesn't make you a hero. Yeah,
it's true. And there's definitely a moment like early on in the book where he realizes, oh wow, I've made a huge mistake. I'm now on the ship with these criminals, where he could have just embraced it and rolled with it, like, and just said, well, this is my life now. Like, this is the path I've chosen, and I'm just going to be a really great spice runner. And I think that's the struggle through the middle part of the book, because he's got this bond with Zori, and he feels this connection to her. So he doesn't really want to just ditch them and go back to Yavin 4. But on the other side, he knows that what he's doing is wrong. And that felt like a pretty primal conflict that we've all had, where we're distracted from what we're doing by somebody else. And it's not even that it's a romantic relationship. It's just like this really deep connection he has with her, because they're both in that trench together. Like, it's as much her story as his, which I thought was really interesting to write, because you see her for like 10 minutes in Rise of Skywalker, and she's one of those characters that you're like, who is this person? And I got to flesh that out, which was awesome.
Yeah. Is this your first young adult novel?
Yeah. I did a young adult mystery podcast called Lethal Lit. So that was like a 6-part series. But my first like YA prose. Yeah.
Well,
you're a YA veteran. Yeah.
Yeah. I started in young adult. So how did it feel for you going from adult? Because people ask me all this. They ask me these questions from moving from YA to adult. So I feel like,
what's your answer first?
To me, I write everything the same way. I use my 3-act structure. I use a bastardized version of the hero's journey, which I've tailored to my own personal needs. And so I approach story in the same way. I, take care of these characters, figure out their motivations, figure out their bruises and what they're willing to do to get it. And most of the time, the thing that makes YA is 1, pacing. 2, I think that teenage characters is the second one. And 3 is hard to pin down, because everybody's like, well, why YA? Why is it called that? Why, what makes it young adult? Because it's not that you're dumbing anything down. In fact, you have to make everything, you have to like level up, because teen readers are so astute, and so like they'll tell you when something sucks to your face. And so it's almost, exactly. So it's like, I mean, not that other people doesn't stop anybody from being like, you suck. It's the internet after all, but,
no filters.
But so that's the thing to me. Like, this is what encompasses young adult. Also hope, for me, young adult novels have to end with a touch of hope in them. And so that's how I still approach when I write my adult romances. I see it the same way.
Yeah, no, I'm so glad you said that, because when when they said, "Oh, it's a Poe novel," I was super excited, and they were like, "It's YA. Is that cool with you?" And I was like, "Sure," because I'm going to write it the same way I write a crime novel. I mean, there's some content concerns. Obviously, there's not as much cursing as I would put in a private eye novel, and but it,
we're not allowed to curse in Star Wars anyway, so
right, exactly. So that was already resolved. But to your point, like I feel like teen and young adult readers, they don't want you to, limit the content to soften it.
Hold on, we're gonna get you back.
Am I frozen?
Yeah. Okay, you're back.
Okay, I'm back. But no, to your point, I don't think teen readers want the stuff watered down for for them. They want it to be intense, and I wrote it like a crime novel, like I would write a regular crime novel for myself, except it was in Star Wars, and the characters were teenagers, and they were dealing with. What I loved about it is they're all dealing with really big emotions. Like Poe is having big feelings from the beginning to the end, and it's very intense, and he pivots like from one second to the next. Whereas if it was an older Poe or an older character, I think they'd be a little more thoughtful about it. Like, well, maybe I shouldn't get on this ship with these people I just met at a pub, and fly and leave my planet. Or maybe, there would be a lot more of maybe this is a bad idea. Whereas I think having the YA, the younger characters, they were more willing to just jump aboard and do crazy stuff, and then you just roll with it. I thought that added to the speed of the novel too.
Yeah, I think young adult novels have this idea of experiencing firsts and that development that comes with that. And so, like, here's my first time, being kind of a space runaway and making all these tough decisions, and you're almost not paying attention to the repercussions that it's going to have on the impact of the rest of your life. And so putting that through a Star Wars lens is really, really cool.
Yeah, I have a question for you. And what I loved about your book, and I think what our books have in common, is we kind of dance in this part of the Star Wars universe that I don't think a lot of people spend time in. I think the big Star Wars moments are the epic Jedi, Skywalker, more mystical, I guess is the term that I'm trying to use, but ours are a little grittier, and they focus on the darker, more criminal corners of the universe. And I wanted to know what that was like for you. I mean, I know you were a fan, so coming in and knowing this is the space I'm going to be working in.
Coming in and knowing that was interesting. I love Batuu. I think that having the criminal element on Batuu was really exciting for me, because even though, of course, I would love to write about, like, what's it like being a Jedi, and like how the interaction between person and the Force, right? That's cool. Yeah. But what happens to regular people? And the story in A Crash of Fate is the fight is happening out. It's right before The Rise of Skywalker opens, and so we have this moment where the galaxy is in flux, but at the end of the day, we see it now. Things need to keep going, right? Like, we're in a pandemic. A lot of us still have to work, right? War is happening. People still have to figure out how to retain the normalcy in their lives at any cost. And on Batuu, what does that look like, having the First Order there, right? Are you gonna turn a blind eye while they're searching for the rebels? I mean, you don't even know that they're searching for them, but how, as a criminal, you have the First Order impacting your bottom line. So you're almost going to do everything you can to get them out of here. And so thinking about what those people are like, and how regular people who fit in between, how do they function? So my character Izzy, who is she's an aspiring smuggler. She wants to be bad at the cost of anything. And then Jules, who is, he's a farm boy. He just quit being a farm boy, and he has the rest of his life sort of still open. He also has to make the decision, well, what do I do to survive if I need to get off this stupid planet? And so, I think that those are the coolest parts of writing A Crush of Fate, and figuring out where, what are these characters actually willing to do? But they're all cinnamon rolls. So, like,
exactly.
The answer is everything, but.
Yeah. No, and what I think what I loved about writing what was more of a crime novel is that you get a sense of the instability, like you said, like free fall happens between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, and that's a pretty long period of time, but it's also a period that we haven't explored that much, like to that a great degree, where you see the Republic is stepping in and the Empire is retreating. But I wanted to really show the gray areas there. Like, it's not like flipping a switch where, you know, a war is over and then somebody else takes over and everything is working as it was before. So there are some people who don't think the Republic and how they're working and how they're ruling is great. And there's criminals who are taking advantage of that moment and like using, I guess, the absence of a forceful empire to really take advantage of the situation. And that's the world that Poe and the Spice Runners get pulled into.
Yeah, and I mean, it's such a big galaxy to try to keep track of. Like, there's going to be a planet that doesn't get the information that the war is over or that the Empire fell until it's too late, right? And so, what does I am fascinated with the idea of the regular people, the civilians, the people who are just trying to get by in this universe, in addition to the big epic heroes. So that's also pretty cool. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, me too. And look, criminals are going to commit crimes no matter who's in charge. So, you know.
So walk us through the day. Like, what's a regular day in a Spice Runner's life?
I mean, so the Spice Runners of Kijimi, like you hear about them a little bit in the movie, but I think in the movie you see them kind of in their waning days. Like, Zori's leading this ragtag group. So I wanted to show like an on the rise criminal organization. So the Spice Runners are basically not as bloodthirsty as the Guavians or some of the other organizations, but they're pretty hardcore, but they're much more methodical. I just read this huge book on organized crime even before I got the Poe gig. So that was like where my head was at, like mafia, like Eastern European criminal organizations. And so I got to like cherry pick from that and put together this idea for the Spice Runners of Kijimi. And it's really, they're just much more precise and tactical than other organizations where it's not just, you know, murder everyone and just get the gold or get whatever. But Spice Runners, you know, it's all about smuggling goods and, you know, creating a system where you get the best stuff and get it fastest. And I think it was just fun to see a really great character like Poe, or a character that we know is going to be a hero, really dropped into that setting, and how uncomfortable he was from the beginning and how he like tries to survive, and then what finally breaks him and makes him decide this is not working for me. So yeah, I mean, taking a look at the Star Wars criminal underworld was one of the most fun parts of writing the book. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. It's excellent. Okay. I love it. Okay, so we're at the half-hour mark. Do you want to start taking some questions from the audience?
Yeah, let's take some questions. There is an ask a question button and at the bottom there if you have one. And let's see. Justin Ackland says, hey, Justin, is there one character or aspect that you created for the book that you'd love to see other Star Wars writers pick up and use? You know, I think one of the most fun parts was creating new characters. And so I had a lot of fun creating like Poe's Spice Runner crew, like Vigilch and Gentry and Mirinda Gann. And they were all like, it's so much fun to go through like the alien encyclopedias and decide like which alien is this person going to be. And yeah, and my favorite character though is Sela Troon, who is a New Republic Security Bureau like phenom. She's like risen up in the ranks, like, and so she's a few years older than Poe, but she has a vendetta against the Spice Runners. And I think she's just so interesting, and I had a really great time creating her. And she just felt like a Star Wars character. I don't know if that makes sense, but you've probably experienced this where you create a character, you're like, okay, this is part of the canon now. And I was also really fond of Tommaso, who is like this. I heard the audiobook. Yes, I was listening to part of the audiobook yesterday, and the narrator gave him this very Antonio Banderas voice. And so now and it was great. So now I've cast him as an aging Antonio Banderas Spice Runner. So I really want to see that come to life.
I'm obsessed with that. I love, first of all, the people who do at Penguin Random House, who produce the Star Wars audiobooks are phenomenal. I love my audiobook. I listen to Resistance Reborn on audio after reading it because it's so good. Yeah. And I think that they're fantastic. But I'm glad that we have an aging Antonio Banderas because, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was funny because I mean, I'm not a big. I listen to audiobooks, but I don't listen to like my books on audio, and so I was like, let me listen to Poe, and I'm listening to it, and it's just so cinematic sounding, like with the effects. I mean, I've listened to other Star Wars books on audio, but I think my wife came into the kitchen and she's like, "Are you listening to your own book?"
Yeah, why not?
I mean, it's cool. Yeah, why not? What's your answer to the question? Was there a character you created in your book that you'd like to see used somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, I have a character named Volt in my book, and he's sort of this aged. He was a warrior. He fought he fought against the Empire. He probably fought against the wrong side, but he'll never tell you. He's on Batuu because Batuu is a planet where people are either running away from something or they're trying to start a new life. But anyway, they don't want to be found. So problem when the First Order arrives. But he works at the creature stall on Batuu. So you have this like scarred, bald, angry. He's just like furious about everything. He's like, kind of paranoid, thinking that people are watching him. And he just takes care of animals all day long. And he doesn't have any friends except Jules. So he... when Jules is in trouble, he's like, all right, let me pull out all my big guns and we're going to go save my friend. I mean, just a regular friend. And so I love him. I think that he's a great character, and not just, I hate saying that because it sounds like, oh, my own character is great, but he's so much fun and I love characters like that where they're there also for a little bit of levity, but at the same time, like, what is his deeper backstory? What did he actually endure? And how have things changed for him starting a new life? And I think that the entire planet of Batuu is full of really, really cool characters. So there you go.
That's your choice. Yeah, no, what I love, I think sometimes we create characters to be more plot, just kind of to move the plot along, and then they kind of take a life of their own. Like Sela Troon was supposed to be, she's just kind of the space cop chasing after Poe. And then I was like, I need to give her a reason for doing this. And then we layered in this personal really connection to the Spice Runners and give her the motivation. Like, why is she after these guys so passionately? And that just added layers and a whole different level to her.
I don't know about you, but the way that I write is oftentimes a character will just materialize fully formed.
Yeah.
Because I need them for that scene, and then hopefully I figure out how to keep them in the story and sort of root them a little bit more.
You start to like them, and then you're like, I could use you here and here. I was thinking about this, when I knew we were doing this event, I was like, I wonder if Zoraida is a plotter. Like, are you a heavy plotter beforehand or a pantser?
I am a heavy plotter, but I'm right now I've exiled myself to Long Island, and I am working on a book, and this is like the first 15 chapters of my book.
Wow, that's impressive.
And it's all color coded, right? So like the blue is the interstitial chapters and things like that, and that's how I usually plot. But I allow myself to, if there's a moment where nothing is working, I allow myself to just write. And then figure out how to reroute. So like my entire writing process feels like I'm on Google Maps.
Right. That's good. That's great. Yeah, no, it's interesting. I was much more of a pantser with my earlier novels, and then I would just find myself in these corners, and I'd have to then go back and re-outline and rewrite. So I would always start out with an idea and then just start writing and eventually start outlining and then write through that outline. But giving myself enough room, like you said, a character shows up and surprises you, you can go that way. But with the Poe book, I had to really like plot it like hardcore out of the gate and say, these are the big beats, this is how it's going to happen. And then I found myself like having a great time just writing through that. It still had enough cracks in the story where if something happened, I could, change it around or do something else. But I think I'm a bigger plotter now, thanks to Star Wars.
Yep. It helps. I think it's. Yeah.
Let's see what other questions we have. Hans says, Oscar Isaac is a fellow Miamian. Yes. And you've written about Miami in your Pete Fernandez series. Are there any secret Star Wars Miami shout-outs in Freefall? yes, to my Miami friends, I would say keep an eye out on a certain kind of tea that is sipped in a scene. And if you get that reference, then you are from the same part of Miami that I am.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. How did you feel? Did you put anybody's name in the books, or I definitely borrowed from some family members' names and just sort of scrambled them and made them a little bit more Star Warsy.
Yeah, I did that. I think, and I do that in my crime novels too. Like because most of my stuff happens in Miami, and so it's a lot of, Cuban, American, like a lot, and it's usually I just pull people from. Sometimes I scroll through Facebook and I'm like, which friend from high school do I want to steal a last name or a first name from? Yeah. But this was more. I definitely had to Star Wars-ize a lot of people, and I just did it phonetically. Like if I liked the way somebody's name sounded, I would make them an alien or something.
Yeah. Daniel DJ Older, he named and I think it was an Aqualish character Zor Ida.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
Oh my god! So that was really fun. That's fun doing things like that. I scrambled. I try to make something like as an inside joke for anybody from Ecuador who might pick it up and read it. So that's always nice to put
I did that too. I think there's one system name that sounds like a neighborhood in Miami. And so if you're from Miami and you're like, did he mean that? I did mean that.
Yeah. It's intentional. Everything's intentional.
Yeah. There's no mistakes in Star Wars. How much lead time did you get to write the book? Were you able to watch The Rise of Skywalker first? That is a good question. No, I wasn't able to watch the movie, but I had, they tell you just enough so you can write the book. And then I was still working on the book when the movie came out. So it was actually really cool to get a couple hours off. I could tell my wife I'm doing research. I have to go see this movie on opening night, and sit in the theater by myself and watch the movie. But not by myself. It was packed, but
alone.
Alone in terms of my kids were not with me, but and then I got to watch it, and your big questions coming out of Rise of Skywalker, if you're a Poe fan, are like, who is Zori Bliss? He was a spice runner. Like, what is Kijimi? And so the idea that all these questions were pointing to this book was really exciting. And then I got to kind of take a little bit of the vibe from the movie and weave it into the book. So I think that answered the question. Let's see. Mysterious Galaxy says, from Gary, if you could write anything in the Star Wars universe, what would you want to write? Wow. Zoraida? No pressure.
I mean, I would want to, love all of Star Wars, right? There's so many different parts of the world that have been untapped. But, as a young adult author who has written many teenage boys, I would be fascinated with a teenage Kylo Ren.
Yes.
I would just be obsessed with him. Also, like Rey and Kylo in the Force, like Force Ghost dating or something like that. I don't know how people feel about them together.
That's a comic book. Let's make that happen.
Yeah. I'll email Jen right now. How do you feel about this?
This came up in a public forum. What are your thoughts? I'd really I'd love to do another book, with these characters in the Poe world. But I have this strange affinity for Obi-Wan. Like, I really want to figure out more about his younger days, because he is part of, like you were saying, those elite characters like the Jedi, but he's not a Skywalker. He's not, he's his own thing, and he's somehow so integral to it. And I kind of want to see, what was he like as a hot-headed teenager?
Oh, yes, and a hot teenager. Also, I would have been obsessed with, because I'm pretty sure that, I don't know, man, I'm going to get this wrong, so I'm just going to just get mad at me. When Obi-Wan meets Satine, he's a young guy. And there's an episode that I remember clearly, and I remember his voice when he says, I would have left the Jedi Order for you. And the romance author within me was like, oh my God, let me write this.
There's a novel there.
Yeah, there's so much in this world. Cassian Andor is one of my favorite characters.
Mm-hmm.
Who else do you love that you would write about?
Yeah, I mean, Poe, definitely Obi-Wan. I'm trying to think who else. You know, I would do a younger Han story, or that world where he maybe shows up. Like, you know, he could theoretically have run into the Spice Runners of Kijimi too, so almost like a free fall prequel, but with Han and Lando, like
yeah, you could just do all the Spice Runners, like a Spice Runners series. That would be really cool.
Yeah, and Zori. I loved writing Zori. I think I had as much fun writing Zori as I did writing Poe, because she was such not a blank slate, but you'd only seen these little moments with her, and so I was like, what's her deal? Like, and you kind of see her evolve from this very temperamental teenager into becoming, you know, the woman that we see in that movie. So she was really fun to write. So I'd write a Zori book for sure.
Yeah,
not a Zoraida book.
Not a Zoraida book. That's a different.
Yeah, not a Zoraida
I'm still working on that. It's called Adventures of an Ecuadorian. So.
I would love that.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. There's a few more questions. Did your Archie experience give you any comfort going into another teen protagonist-centered IP? That's from Mary Elizabeth. Yeah, you know, I feel like I'd written a lot of kind of teen drama. The book, The Archies, the comic book is about, you know, Archie, Betty, Veronica, Jughead, and Reggie in a band, but it's really a story about kids leaving home and becoming friends, and like the mistakes you make on the road, and, you know, failure. I tell people it's a big comic book about failure. Like, they fail, they screw up at the show, they meet these other famous bands and they can't measure up. So it sounds really depressing, but that's what, you know, that period in life is. You kind of have to fail to become who you are. And so that really, I felt, was a good lesson for writing Poe, and not being afraid to throw somebody into something where they maybe don't come out as the winner right away. You know, you have to really stumble to get to who you are. Wow, I got really deep there, but
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Let's see, we have a few more. Oh, this is cool. If you could see Phil Noto draw one scene or new character in the book not represented on the cover, what would it be?
Ooh.
Wow. What can I say without spoiling too much of the book? There's a moment where Poe and Zori are basically, it's hopeless. It's a hopeless moment. Like, I don't want to say, you know, they think people are dead. You know, there's no way out. And it's just them and this funny little droid, and there's like blaster fire everywhere, and he's trying to get Zori off the ship, and it felt very climactic to me, and very much like, well, I guess the book could end here. It felt very like Star Wars Casablanca to me. So yeah, I would see that. And Phil's an old friend, so it was so funny to have him draw. Not funny, I mean, he's got a history with Poe, but it was funny to see him do that, and he did such a great job. What about you? Would you have Phil draw anything from the book, if you could, from your book?
Yes, because there are a lot of moments that I feel like, because we have Batuu as a world. Right. I think that there's a moment where Phil, Izzy and Jules blow up a bunch of stuff in the market, and I think that's rife for a bunch of good action.
Yeah, that would be great. This is a good question for both of us from Susie. Hi, Susie. I came in late, so you may have answered this. We did not. But what has been the most surprising, unexpected thing about writing this book? What has been the most? I think we talked about it. We did actually talk about it a little bit. It was just like the freedom. You know, the freedom of being able to add to the mythos. I thought that was the most fun part. Like creating planets, creating characters. Like a lot of the core casts in Freefall are characters created for the book, which was a blast and a lot of fun. And to think that you could kind of not only create characters, but key moments in these characters' histories, like Poe's big breaking point with his dad, or, you know, killing a character that, you know, maybe readers have a connection to. Like, that to me feels really intense, and it's an honor, really, like, to be able to add to this chorus. Like, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for me, the biggest thing is, the most surprising thing is how much of yourself you're allowed to put in. how much of your own voice carries through. And I think that the reason why Star Wars has, pulled from so many different kinds of authors who write so many different kinds of things. I write YA fantasy and romance, and you write mysteries and thrillers and Archie. And so we have such different backgrounds, and you can still hear our own voices, our own writing techniques within these books. And to me, that's the most surprising and delightful thing.
Yeah, they don't read generically. It doesn't feel like they're just cranked out in any way. It's totally the opposite. Like, each author is so different. Like, an Alex Freed book is going to read so differently from like Claudia Gray's, and our books are different, but they're also like, if you read my mystery novels and then you read Poe, like, you can tell they're the same from the same person.
The same writer, yeah.
Yeah,
do you have a favorite Star Wars book from the new or old canon?
I really loved Resistance Reborn. Yeah. I loved Crash of Fate 2. I'm not just saying that, I did.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And I loved Phasma.
Yeah, Phasma was so good. I
read the Aftermath books, and I like those too.
Those are a lot of fun. Chuck has a very snappy voice. Yeah. My favorite one is Lost Stars, because I am such that Star, like, they are truly star-crossed lovers. And she ends it in this way that I threw the book across the room, and I was like, Claudia, how dare you? But I should have known, because I've read her other non-Star Wars stuff, so I should have known she was going to like rip my heart out and throw it into the garbage.
I like Bloodlines too. Is that am I getting the title right? Bloodlines?
No,
yeah.
I think it's Bloodline or Bloodlines.
Bloodline, yeah.
I love Claudia's The Princess of Alderaan, because there's a Millennium Falcon cameo in there, and I really wanted to put a Falcon cameo in A Crash of Fate, but I couldn't do it because they weren't sure when the Falcon was on Batuu. So I was kind of bummed. That was like my only disappointment, other than, everything else is perfect.
I got a Millennium Falcon joke. I got a Falcon joke in there, so I was proud about that. I was happy that happened.
Oh man.
I think we have one more question.
Okay.
Let's see. If you got to write post the Rise of Skywalker books, which character would you love to write? You can go first.
Wait, what was the question?
If you could write any book set post Rise of Skywalker.
Post, okay. Ooh, I mean, I would love to see what Poe's up to, but also I would love to see my characters, Izzy and Jules, because in my heart of hearts, they showed up on their ship in that big, the big moment where everyone answers. They answered Leia's call. I think that they showed up, and so, what do they do now? What happens to the galaxy? What does Rey do? Does she start putting the Jedi back together? I think all of those questions need to be answered. We can't just. It's not all said and done for me, but.
Well, I think Izzy and Jules team up with Poe, and we get to co-write that novel.
Yeah, there we go.
Tell that story. Yeah.
Let's just
I would love to
film.
see. Yeah, just like we're printing money here, but I'd love to see what Rey's doing. I think she was really. I mean, aside from obviously Poe, by default, I want to see what Poe's doing, and then Rey. I'd love to see what Rey's up to.
Yeah. So that's right. These characters never leave us. They just don't.
I know.
So.
Yeah, I'm worried about that moment when I see somebody else writing Poe. I'm going to feel like very, very,
jealous?
very sad. Yeah, jealous. Because you have this connection. You really connect with these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What else are you working on these days?
I'm working on. So I have a book series called the Brooklyn Brujas series, and it's basically like the Charm sisters were Latinas, and living in Brooklyn instead of San Francisco. And so the third book in the series comes out on September 1st, and I'm really excited for that because it's my interpretation of the youngest Bruja gets kidnapped and taken to a Caribbean fairyland. So it's what I think, like, what does fairyland look like in a Latin American diaspora? And I have an anthology called Vampires Never Get Old, which is going to be coming out September 22nd. So my fall is pretty busy.
That's good. Yeah. And
what about you?
Are you? I'm working on my first standalone crime novel. It's called Secret Identity, and it's set in 1975, and it involves a protagonist who moves from Miami to work in New York, to work in comic books, and she gets a job at a comic book company, and she creates this character. She ghostwrites this comic and creates this character, and then her collaborator is murdered, and so she has to solve the murder of this person she worked with to create this comic book, to kind of reclaim the character, and it's called Secret Identity. It's coming out from Flatiron. We don't have a release date yet because I need to write it, but need to finish writing it. But
yeah,
that's exciting. And then I've got some other comic book stuff happening that I can't announce yet. But
that's very cool.
This is constant sneaking back in, but that sounds super exciting. I like both of you are working on so many awesome and exciting things that and it's so whenever you're like, I have something cool I'm working on, but I can't tell you, it's almost like your curiosity is piqued even more. You're like, wait, no, tell us. But,
yes, just spill the beans.
That is right. Well, that is time for the event. We are at that time of the evening, and I just want for attending. This was such a fun event, and I feel like we could all stay and talk about Star Wars for hours and hours. The passion runs so deep. But I want to thank everyone who came and participated, all the amazing questions that you guys asked. I want to thank our awesome, awesome authors, Alex and Zoraida. And don't forget, if
thank you so
purchase
much.
either one of those books, there's that purchase button for you guys. But have an amazing night, everyone. Goodbye.
Thanks, Zoraida. It was so great for you to chat
thank you
with
so
me.
much.
Thank
I'm
you.
so happy for you.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Galaxy.
It's awesome. Thanks, everybody. This was great.
Bye.
Bye-bye.